Excellent. Welcome. It's good to see you. It's good to have you on this webinar with me. And I'm just trying to figure out the best angle for that camera. There we go. I hope you're well. And we will have the chat box open, the Q&A box. And so if you actually, we'll go with chat because that's just easier to manage. So if you have any questions while we're doing this, I encourage you to type them into the chat box for me so that I can answer them for you if it's appropriate to what we're doing today. So today we are doing an introduction to iridology, but not just any iridology. We are doing constitutional iridology. So as we are getting to roll into that, I would love to do that little tech check, and I'd love it if you would let me know if you can hear me fine, and if you can see the slides fine too. So we'll wait till we get an answer or two in on that to make sure that we've got good audio and good video. We are a small group. Thank you, Katie. I appreciate that. She says, I can hear and see you. Yes, that's always good. We're a small group, so really, I really do encourage questions and discussion to make sure that you get the most you can out of this little bit of time we're spending together today. And Valerie says, perfect, thank you. Excellent, thanks, Valerie. Appreciate that. I would love to know just at the outset, how many of you have iridology experience already, where you've got some training of some kind under your belt? That will, if you've been with me on any webinars previously, you'll know that what I like to do is tailor on the fly my presentations to my audience. And so if you are brand new to iridology and you've only heard about it, you don't know anything about it, I want to know that. Just type newbie in the comments. If you've got some training, I'd love to know, is it Jensenian? Is it constitutional? What is it? Just again, so that I know how to tailor make this. You've chosen to invest some time with me, and I want to make sure that it is a worthwhile investment for you. So hopefully you're doing, I call it lightning fingers, typing quickly. When I do lightning fingers, I make all kinds of typos. We're going to get started now. And these are the questions we are going to ask. And since everybody's been really shy about saying what their background is, only with you and David Pesic. Okay, Katie, excellent, thank you. So Katie's got some background. Lovely, thanks, Katie, I appreciate that. And since you're the only one I know who's got a background here. All right, these are the questions we are going to ask and answer in our time together today. So the first thing that we are asking is, what is iridology? Just in case some of you are brand new to this, I'm just going to put my phone on airplane mode. I was going to say my plane on phone mode. No, I don't own an airplane. That's a dream. Okay, we're going to talk about, and Valerie says, yes, just finishing case studies. Okay, so Valerie, I'm assuming you mean case studies for an IPA certification then. Okay, so we're going to talk about what is iridology, what can it teach us, and how should it be used. These are things that, you know, a lot of people who are out there in the world who don't know much about iridology, and maybe for some of you, this is you have an idea of what iridology is, but it's based on outdated information, and that's not really what iridology is anymore. And that outdated information often also filters into the what can iridology teach us, because it doesn't teach us what we thought it used to teach us. We know way better now. And how should it be used? This is very important, because if we are using that outdated information, then we're going to use it incorrectly. If we've got modern information, up-to-date information, we still may not be using it correctly. We may actually be trying to take the new understanding and using it in the old paradigm, which is a problem. And so we're going to actually walk through some case studies today to demonstrate how this should be used. So in case you are new to me, and I think most of you actually know me, my name is Judith Cobb. I'm a master herbalist, a natural nutrition clinical practitioner, a certified iridologist, and a certified comprehensive iridology instructor. I've got a few other credentials in amongst there, but those are the ones that are most recognizable and that are of most value to me on a day-to-day basis in my clinic. I'm also the wife of mom, the wife of one, and actually in July, we're going to be celebrating our 40th wedding anniversary. I'm so stoked. The mom of 7, yes, we've had 7 kids together, and we have 8 grandchildren. So that is me. In my personal life, I love being fit. I love working out. And I used to do triathlons and half marathons. I've taken a leave of absence from that for a few years, but I'm hoping to get back into that. That's what I'm training for now, so that once COVID is over and we can actually have races again, I want to be competitive again. I also, what else can I tell you? I've been a practitioner for 40 years. And when I started out, things were very different from what they are now. I'm just monitoring Facebook in case anyone from there is still looking for the link. And over those 40 years, a lot has changed. Number one, Google, right? Dr. Google. He really messes everything up for us because there's so much information, and some of it's good and some of it's not. And our clients sometimes believe everything they read. And so that's a challenge. We didn't have the internet when I started out. We didn't have email. Golly, I remember getting my first fax machine and thinking I'd come into the 20th century. And I just had. Pretty funny stuff. So what is iridology? Iridology is the study of the iris of the eye. Now, that's a pretty simplistic explanation of it. When we are talking about iridology, we are talking about the color, the base color of the eye. We are talking about extra colors that are sitting on top of that. We are talking about how the fibers are sitting in the eye. And so there are a lot of parts to this question of what is iridology. It's not just one thing. So typically, most iridologists focus on the iris of the eye, or the part that is often known as the colored part of the eye. And that's great because, again, that takes into account the fiber structure, the base color, and other colors that are sitting on top of that eye. And I forgot to get my teaching notes out. Rather than winging it, I'm just grabbing my extra computer so that I can make sure I've got my teaching notes open, so I don't miss anything that I want to share with you. I mean, if you spend hours preparing a presentation, you want to do it right, right? Okay. And so with this, for instance, when we're doing iridology, rather, we want to also take into account what our clients' needs are. That is so important because the eyes tell us what the inherent potential is. They don't tell us what's going on right now, at least the iris doesn't. And so we need to understand from our client's perspective what they want help with. We may look at an iris and go, oh my goodness, this person needs this and this. And when we ask them about it, they really don't have a problem there. They really don't need help with that because they're already doing the right things and it has controlled the situation. So when we are doing this, we always want to take into account what are the client's priorities here. Not what are our priorities, what are the client's priorities. So for example, this is a 51-year-old female, and she came to me with a minor hip issue, which I actually knew I was not equipped to deal with, so I referred her out to a medical massage therapist, and she got brilliant results with him. But she also wanted help with menopause. She was finding that she was a little emotionally unstable premenstrually, which was new for her, and she wanted that emotional balance back. And so when I looked at her eyes, my entire focus needed to be on her gut. And you go, but what does that have to do with perimenopause? Has everything to do with perimenopause, because if she's not able to digest her foods well, and especially her protein, how is she going to get the building blocks to make the hormones to help balance her emotional jags and to keep her even through perimenopause? And how is she going to get the proteins to keep her blood sugar stable to keep the adrenal glands from going into panic mode? Right? So we went in through the gut. And that was what we did, because the adrenals play a huge role in menopause, but she also has a really stressful job. She has a social work background and she works in community outreach. So hugely stressful. Loves it to pieces and doesn't want to change it, but finds that there are some times when it is a little bit taxing for her. And so by going into the gut, her diet was already amazing. Like, I want to live with her and eat her food, right? Amazing. And so it was just her gut needed some support. So by understanding what her needs were and understanding what I was seeing in the eyes, because there's nothing in her eyes that says hormone imbalance, right? I was able to go back and say, well, it's a gut issue. She's not digesting things well enough. And her history is that she is celiac, right? So we know that she has issues with digesting certain things, particularly the gluten, which is a protein. Her eyes say she has problems digesting protein. And so we were able to come up with a very tight little program for her, which was enzymes and probiotics. And it really did an amazing job. Now, it's really important to remember too, when we're looking at eye photos, and for those of you who have some background, we want to look at pupil size, because it teaches us a lot about this person's current stress levels. And in order to do that accurately, you have to understand the equipment that is used to get to look at the eyes. In this case, this was my Iris Explorer 4, which has extremely bright lighting. And so I know that's going to artificially pull that pupil down and make it smaller. So I know that when the pupil is this size with this much light, it's probably much bigger without that light. And that tells me much about how she's handling stress right now. And that was a part of the reason why we needed to go in with the adrenal glands as well. But we also wanted to put her on some methylated Bs, because that was a part of what I saw in her eyes that probably needed some support as well. There's a couple of tiny markings in there that are way beyond the scope of what we're talking about today. Modern iridologists, however, look beyond the iris, right? We also look into the sclera. And in the sclera, we see blood vessels. So many clients come in and say, can you make these red blood vessels go away? And I'm going, maybe, because the sclera is very dynamic, where the pupil is inherent, or I'm sorry, where the iris is inherent. The base color is not going to change, except maybe a little as we get older. It may fade a little, kind of like your hair color fades to gray as you get older, right? So the base color may fade a little with age. The fiber structure is going to stay the same, and the base color is going to stay mostly the same, right? But in the sclera, the blood vessels change dynamically. So if you have blood vessels that have become very prominent, that tells us there is a problem. So as we look at this and we see all of these various blood vessels around here, they suggest issues that are either preclinical, so have not become obvious enough to actually be a symptom, or they may be an actual problem that is now a symptom, right? And so when we look at the sclera and we see where the hot spots are based on where these blood vessels are, and we correlate then these hot spots to the client's symptoms, and we layer that up with what we see as their inherent potential, it gives us a tremendous depth of understanding for where our client is now and what they need in order to improve their health. Did you catch all those parts? But we need to know what the client's symptoms are. We need to understand the sclera, and we need to understand the iridology. And we need to mesh those together, and where they overlap is where we're probably going to spend our time focusing. Now, the best way to share this introduction and to answer those initial questions that we asked is actually going to be to do some actual case studies. So let's dive into that and see where that takes us. Now, I just have to move these little boxes out of the way. I'm actually going to shrink that one down. Yay. Okay. So now the beauty of doing iridology the right way, and that doesn't mean Jensen versus constitutional. It's about taking your constitutional and learning how to use it properly in your practice. This is something I really teach in my classes. I don't just teach the markings. I don't just teach what they mean and how to integrate them all, but I teach the how do you actually use this in a clinical setting. Because Valerie's just finishing her case studies, and I will tell you that doing an iris analysis as a case study is the wrong way to do it in a clinical practice. Yeah, your teachers probably haven't taught you that. So when we look at this, these are actually the eyes of one of my very first clients. Now, these are not the original eye photos I took because this client has been with me for 38 years. When you do iridology well, and when you do it right, when you apply iridology correctly in your practice, it helps you to create long-term relationships with your clients, as opposed to what I often will call two-hit wonders. The two-hit wonders are the clients that come in for one appointment and they get what they think they need, and they may come in for one follow-up because they want to know what their eyes said, and then you never see them again. Right, but I have many clients who've been with me for 10, 15, 20, and some even, like I've got a few that have been with me for nearly 40 years. They were some of my very first clients, and they are still my clients. And I get to be possessive like that. So she is now in her mid-50s. When she came to me, actually late 50s, when she came to me 38 years ago, she was in her very early 20s. And she, back then, her complaint was that her skin was a mess. It was one hot mess. Oh my goodness, I felt for her because I had skin like that when I was in high school, and it was cleaning up my diet that got my skin to actually come out being quite lovely. And so she came into me, and her complaint was that her skin was just a disaster. And I'm not being mean. It is the truth. If anyone had looked at her, they would have said, there's got to be something that can be done. And there was plenty that could be done. But as we talked in that first appointment, and as I did an iris analysis with her in that first appointment, two things came to light. The first is that on her eyes, the skin zone is not a robust feature for her. It's not one of the strengths in her body. It's actually one of the weak links in her body. And what that really means is that when the body gets overloaded with toxins, it's going to send the excess out through whatever channels are available. And for her, the skin was not strong enough to say, that much garbage is not my job. I'm not taking all of it. I'm only taking this much. And so the skin would go, all right, I'll deal with it. Just send it here, just send it here. And the skin got overloaded and became a mess with all kinds of eruptions. But in our conversation, and this is borne out by what her eyes show us, she said she was constipated. Now, when I say constipated, I mean, oh my goodness, constipated. One bowel movement every 10 days, whether she needed to or not. She'd been to the doctor said, that's just fine. If that's how you are, if that's your normal, that's just fine. And I'm going, holy cramully, how can that be fine on any planet, right? And so as we look at her eyes, we see that the collarette is very constricted, which says that the entire gut is like this, which says that nothing's going to move well. She's going to need to relax the whole GI tract in order for a bowel movement to actually happen. So that is exactly what we did. I explained to her, and she had actually just finished her massage therapist training. So I explained to her, and she got it because she knew the anatomy, that if it's showing up on the skin, it's probably a bowel problem. And here's where the bowel shows up in the eyes. And this says that you hold it all in and very tight, and it's keeping things from moving. So we talked a lot about diet, and we broke that down into doable steps for her. Talked about fluid consumption, got her off the coffee and onto water, and got it so that by the time she came back to me a month later, now it wasn't a perfect bowel yet, but it was like, oh my goodness, she was having a bowel movement every 2 days. She was like, I didn't know I could poop this much. And I'm like, yes, we did the happy dance. We celebrate good bowel movements, right? And so we got her up to 1 every 2 days. And as we continued to work, we got her up to 1 a day. As she got up to the 1 every 2 days and 1 a day, I mean, we'd really like to have 3 a day, but heavens, going from 1 every 10 days to 1 a day is like, whoa, amazing. And she noticed that her skin spontaneously started to clear up. And so I reminded her of that link and how important these things were that she was doing with the improved dietary work that we had built over several months, actually, because you can't do a diet overhaul in one appointment. And we talked about the importance of the water as the fluid intake to help the body flush toxins out through the kidneys whenever possible. And that was absolutely brilliant. And then she said, oh, by the way, I had not told you that PMS was, past tense, miserable. I would have PMS for 10 days out of every month when I could just spit nails, claw people's eyes out, and just, I was angry all the time. And she said, now that my bowels are functioning really well, I have no more PMS. Yes. And so we wouldn't have thought necessarily that the PMS and the bowel were connected, except that we see it in the eyes. Now, as we're looking at this, then we need to remember that this needs to be a long-term thing. So she's been coming to see me, like I said, for 38 years, and that's not once a month for 38 years. That's, 5 or 6 times at the very beginning, and then she drifted away, and then 4 or 5 years later, she comes back for another 3 or 4 appointments, and then she drifts away, and she just flows in and out of my practice, and I love that. I've seen her through getting married, having 2 kids, her husband retiring. It is so great. But she just recently started coming back again. This time, she's got hot flashes and sweats. And so when we look at her iris, her irides, what we see specifically is she has got lymphatic irides. So she's got that beautiful blue base, but there's a lot of orangey brown over top. And that orangey brown tells us that liver likely wants to be in trouble. We see indicators here that she wants to burn her B vitamins, vitamin C, calcium, and magnesium at record speed. And so as we look at this, I'm asking her, well, what's the stress doing in your life? Well, she is self-employed. She is an accounting bookkeeper. She works on contract for several small businesses. And here in Calgary, our economy has been absolutely awful. We're an oil patch city, and with the war, and I use that term loosely, the price battles between with Russia and is it Iraq or Iran going on, and some things that our Canadian government has done, we're a city of only 1.25 million. So we're not a huge city, but we've lost over 100,000 jobs from the oil patch in our downtown. And that has affected her. She's been scrambling to find extra work to make sure she's got the income covered. And that all goes internally for her. She totally sucks that in. She holds her stress. So as I'm looking at her eyes and I'm noting that she burns her B vitamins, vitamin C, calcium, magnesium quickly, that's absolutely what's happening. And knowing that the liver needs those B vitamins, we needed to get her the B vitamins in the right format. We needed to get her vitamin C, and we needed to get her some calcium and magnesium. Now, as we as we continue to talk, she had suggested that she was starting to have some problems with some bladder incontinence. Now, she has some weight that she could lose quite easily. She could probably lose 50 to 60 pounds and just be getting into a healthy weight range, right? And she has worked on it. She has lost some weight, but she still has another 50 or 60 to go. And so that can really affect incontinence in women, because if you've got that weight sitting on the bladder, it's going to weaken the sphincters, right? So we've got her working with weight loss. We've got her also working with a pelvic floor specialist, a physiotherapist who does only pelvic floor, to make sure that this client has got, is building that pelvic floor strength while she's losing the weight. But there's also a marking in her sclera that suggests bladder stress, right? That the bladder's had enough, it's stressed, it's inflamed, it needs some support. Now, we can't legally call it inflamed. We're iridologists. We don't diagnose and we don't prescribe. But knowing what I see, knowing what her symptoms are, then we go back and we talk about, are you drinking coffee again? Because that'll irritate your bladder. Are you getting good, clean water? Because that will help your bladder. And we added then some of the mucilaginous herbs to help calm down the bladder, to help take the inflammation out, to soothe it, so that while she's getting all these other pieces in place with her weight and with the pelvic floor specialist, we will actually be able to see results a little more quickly. And that was what we did with her. That's, covering several appointments, right? You want to be a little bit careful when you're doing this. Online, what you see people who, I don't know if it's that they want to show off what they know, and think that that's impressing people, and it will impress some people, but people will post images, eye images, poorly done eye images, no less, online, on Facebook or wherever, and somebody else, whoever owns that page, will do an analysis, and all they do is they list out every marker they see, and they list out every problem that it could be and everything the person needs to do. And I will tell you up front, that is the fastest way to have a client not come back. Just saying. Maybe if it's a free assessment, you can get away with it, but if it's a free assessment, you don't have a client history. You don't have the client there to ask questions of them and to get clarity on, to help you understand what you're seeing. Katie, we're not going to get into absolute specifics of where markers are, simply because this is an introduction. And when we do the course, we get into way more detail, but at an introductory level, we can't necessarily point out everything we're going to be talking about today. But thank you for asking, truly appreciate that. These are the eyes of a client who's in her mid-30s. This is an exciting case because her mother is a client of mine, or was about 25 or 30 years ago. And I saw the mother through having this client. And now this client, whose eyes we're looking at, is having babies of her own, and I'm seeing her through pregnancies. So this is a second generation client, and I've got third generation because I'm working with her babies, which is very cool. When she came to see me, she was wanting to get ready to get pregnant. There were no known fertility issues, but she just could have kissed her feet for this, because she said on her first appointment, I just want to make sure that I'm healthy and strong. We'd like to have a baby in about a year. I was like, my goodness, can you be my poster child? You're the kind of client I love working with, because I do a lot of work with pregnancy and fertility. And I have clients that come into me like 4 months pregnant saying, I just want to have a healthy baby. And I'm thinking, we should have had this conversation 18 months ago, but let's pick up where we're at. So she wanted help getting ready to get pregnant. And as we looked at her eyes, what we see with these eyes is that they show that she has an inherent tendency to having too much acid in her body. Her body just likes to do that. Having said that, her diet is amazing. Like, she's another one of my clients that I just want to live with her and eat her food. right? Because her diet is really amazing. And what that means is that even though the eyes say that she has an inherent predisposition towards being over acid, her diet will control that, right? So she's putting in the right foods that are totally controlling those acid levels. And that's really exciting. Now, what we also see here is that she's another one who holds her stress in. She's another one who needs to, who is a bit of an introvert, or actually quite a bit of an introvert. So she gathers everything in. And it can be a little bit of a challenge for her to actually let go and relax. She's okay in a family setting, but not so great in big social settings. So we needed to start working with her right out of the starting blocks with the idea of relaxing and learning to let go, because labor and delivery are about relaxing and learning to let go, right? If you're always doing this, you're fighting against contractions and you don't get that baby out. So we really needed to also encourage her to slow down and take time when she's eating. Her food choices were excellent, but she was very rushed and often focused on other things while she was eating. So we got her to set a timer for 15 to 20 minutes, which is really not long enough, but it's a good start, and said, set that timer and you start eating when you press the start button on your timer, and you don't get to leave the table until the timer goes off. So, you know, if you're going to be at the table for 15 or 20 minutes, you might as well be chewing your food. So slow it down, relax, put your fork down between bites, just to let your digestive tract work a little bit better. There's some suggestions in her eye that suggested to me that she might have the MTHFR defect, which means that she doesn't properly methylate her B vitamins. Now, I have no lab tests to prove that, but there's a few markings here that made me go, I wonder. So knowing that, I decided that it would be wise to not only use an excellent prenatal vitamin with her, but to choose one that had the L5 version of the folate, so that we didn't need to worry about her ability to methylate anything. So if you need to know more about methylation, look up, I think his name is Ben Lynch, Dr. Ben Lynch. He does some really great work with MTHFR. Also, looking at her digestive tract, could see that there was, because of that tension, that she maybe doesn't digest well or has the risk of not digesting well. And thought, if she doesn't digest well, that's going to push her acid levels up. So we used an enzyme with her. And we chose an enzyme that also supports the liver, because MTHFR defect is a liver-based enzyme issue. And so we wanted to support the liver here. Now, in the ensuing years, because this was about 5 years ago that I saw her, since then, she's gone on to have 2 very healthy babies, both home births with no complications. Now, the youngest is, now that the youngest child is about a year old, this mama is struggling with a lot of stress. She's got one child who's very placid and one who's very active. And again, looking at this mama's eyes, what we see is that she burns through her stress nutrients very quickly. And so we knew we needed to really pad those up for her to help her manage the stress. We also added specifically red raspberry leaves and liquid chlorophyll to her as easy ways for her to pick up her minerals, rather than using compressed tablets of minerals. And the really fun part is that now I also get to work, like I said earlier, with her babies. And so that's just a ton of fun. And actually, I work with her aunt and one of her cousins, and just a beautiful, beautiful family to work with. Here is another client. Now, this client, let me get my notes lined up properly here. This client is a female who is in her mid-50s. And I worked with her about 20 years ago and helped her resolve a sinus issue. And as she's in her mid-50s, she now is having hot flashes and a little bit of a struggle with depression. And she wanted to know, what could I do to help her? And that's not generally a hard thing to do. And looking at her eyes and seeing that the digestive zone is inherently not a strong point, that she also internalizes her stress, really likes to have a sequence for the day with a checklist of getting things done. I knew that there would be things that we could do that could help control these hot flashes, mitigate them for her. Her diet, again, is really good. Like, bizarre to have clients that had such amazing diets because they're usually doing well. But there was one thing that was amiss in her diet, and I'm going to come to that in just a moment. Her eyes told me that I needed to ask her some questions. The first one was I needed to ask her very specifically about her nervous system. Now, she again is a social worker, so she understands the anatomy, she understands those physiological and hormonal responses, the neurotransmitter responses. So I asked her about her nervous system, and I specifically wanted to know about her adrenal glands because her eyes tell me that she lives in that sympathetic response mode, that she is always waiting for the next shoe to drop, the next crisis to hit. She's just always on the edge, at the ready to spring into action. And she said, oh, she thought she had that under control. She's really worked on it. She's learned to meditate. She's learned to take breaks in the day. And that's great because that will have a significant impact for the good. I asked her, what does she do if things are getting out of hand? And she says she just has learned to take a step back and take a break. Awesome. So then I asked her if the hot flashes were worse when she was under stress. And she said, absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. So then, looking at her eyes and seeing what they see, I asked her about her liver. Did she notice any issues digesting fats? Nope, that was all good. Excellent. Again, her diet was very, very good. And so I asked her if she holds grudges or gets angry, and she said, nope, she's got that all worked out well. So then I needed to think, well, what am I going to do? I mean, her diet was like about 90% vegetarian, and very smart vegetarian choices, not just cutting out protein, but making sure she's getting protein from her plant sources. Lots of vegetables. She drinks water. She eats fruit. She's just, really a good diet. But the one thing that was out of line for her was she drinks coffee. And coffee will always stress the adrenals and the liver, right? So we negotiated a 10-day holiday from coffee just to see what the impact would be. Because that was really about the only thing that was messing her up. And I could see that very clearly. When she came back for her follow-up appointment, I asked her, how did the 10 days without coffee go? And she said, great. I said, did you get a headache? No. And what about the hot flashes? Oh, they just completely disappeared. I went, super. So what is your course of action moving forward? And I said, are you going to stay off the coffee, or what's going to happen here? And she said, well, the coffee is the only thing I do that's not good for me, and I'm not willing to give it up. So I asked her, so you're okay with having hot flashes as long as you can have the coffee? And at this point, she was actually on pharmaceuticals. She was doing hormone replacement therapy as well, and that was not controlling the hot flashes. And she said, yeah, I guess I'll just stay on the hormone replacement therapy so I can have my coffee. And I underscored, but the hormones aren't working. And she said, yeah, I know, but that's okay. I really like my coffee. So even though I could see in her eyes that it was liver and adrenals that were doing the hot flashes, and even though she proved to herself that coffee was the thing that was messing her up, she was not willing to do the other homework. And I don't have a herb or a vitamin that is strong enough to override the impact of coffee. So, normally I would have done some methylated B vitamins with her perhaps, but they wouldn't override the coffee. Coffee's a diuretic. It's just going to suck those B vitamins right out of her body, and she's never going to get the benefit of them. So rather than being dishonest and suggesting she buy some supplements that I knew she was just going to pee out because she was drinking coffee, I had to kind of just give her a hug and let her go, because she's not at the place where she wants to make the necessary changes. So what we see then with Iridology is we use Iridology to guide the questions we ask. We use it to help us create rapport with our clients, and we use it to inform our recommendations. So give us the information we need on which to base questions and recommendations. And with that, we've got one more analysis that we can do. This is another one of my clients who is in her mid-60s, and she also has been with me for 38 years. She was just in a few months ago, and we did the math, and it was amazing. We calculated back which of her babies was she pregnant with and which one was I pregnant with when we first met. And so we know it's 38 years. And back then when she came to me, she wasn't coming for herself. She was coming for her children who had recurring ear infections and asthma. And she did not want to do the medical route because she didn't think that was going to work for them. And after that, she started coming in for herself, and then she's got a lot of training. She's a herbalist and a nutritionist in her own right, and she kind of faded off and did her own thing for many years and started coming back about 3 or 4 years ago. But now her challenges are these. Her A1C is elevated, and she has cholesterol issues, and she's carrying about 30 to 40 extra pounds that are not being helpful for her. Her eyes clearly show us inherent potentials for liver imbalances, and as well as suggestions of liver enzyme imbalances that are current. That means that she doesn't metabolize her carbs properly, and it likely ends up as being elevated cholesterol with the risk of plaquing in the arteries and adding to her blood sugar challenges, right? So when we look at this and we see that she's got so many markers that are pointing towards the liver, pointing towards the fact that she needs help. No, let me rephrase that when she's under stress, she burns through her B vitamins, vitamin C, calcium, and magnesium very quickly. We knew we needed to be working on diet, which for her was really me just reminding her. I lovingly call it nagging her of things that she already knows and that she could easily put in place, right? And so gently nagging her that she needed more green leafy vegetables, that she needed to get rid of the coffee, things like that. And this is all challenging for her because her husband is terminally ill and has very specific dietary requirements. Although he likes to do the cooking, and when he does the cooking, he does not cook for health. He cooks for pleasure. And so there are some issues with that. And she's also had 15 years of ongoing stress caring for relatives, an uncle and her mom, who both passed away within the last couple of years. So for her, we nagged her a bit on her diet. The first starting points were to get rid of the coffee because the liver clearly is showing indicators here that both dynamic and inherent that the liver is very prone to stress and is under stress. And so we needed to get her off the coffee, and we needed her to bump up her leafy greens as our first 2 steps. We also added the methylated Bs to her because I suspect she also has that liver enzyme issue that we've talked about a little bit today. I've also suggested that going for walks every day would be a really, really good thing for her. So they bought a little dog, and she takes the dog for a walk every day. Even if her husband's not well enough to go, or if he's not interested in going, or if he's got other plans for the day, she goes for her walk, which is absolutely brilliant. Now, adding to this, when I see liver, and when I see that inherent potential for liver issues, and when I hear liver activity in the things the client is saying to me, I almost always default to N-acetylcysteine. I love it for its effect on phase 1, phase 2 detox, and I will sometimes throw in milk thistle because it works with liver phase 1, phase 2 detox as well. So we did that with her, and because her A1C is elevated, which suggests she is pre-diabetic, which, you know, at 30 to 40 pounds overweight with elevated cholesterol, it all makes sense, right? So we suggested also using berberine because that helps to stabilize the blood sugars. And she found that when she followed the instructions really well for a couple of months, she had just been to the doctor, came to me, we got her on the program, she followed it really well for about 2 or 3 months and went back and got more blood work done. And the before and after were astonishing. Her medical doctor said, I don't know what you've been doing for the last 3 months, but keep doing it. All your numbers are normal. And then life happened. She fell off the wagon, kind of got run over by the wagon, and reverted to the old patterns. Went back for another series of blood work, and it came back as bad as the first go round. So now we're working on getting her back on track to help her get all those pieces in order, and just encouraging her to continue doing her best so that she can avoid type 2 diabetes, so she can, you know, get her cholesterol in check, she can get her weight down, she can actually improve her health, because that's what it's all about, right? It's all about understanding what we see in the eyes, understanding what the client's symptoms are, what their goals are, and then using the eyes to guide us in asking questions so that we can create programs that our clients can actually stick with and be successful with. That's our job. Our job is to teach them how to improve their health, but to teach them at a pace that they can actually do well. Just going to drop in 30 seconds here that the next go round of Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology will be starting on July 30th. This is the only live online 40-hour fully mentored course for nutritionists, herbalists, and naturopaths who want to streamline their clinical work without sacrificing client care. And we do all of this so that our nutritionists, herbalists, and naturopaths can stop working unpaid overtime to develop their client programs, so they can stop overwhelming their clients with programs that are just unmanageable, and so they can create programs that will create client compliance for long-term client retention. Registration is not opening until the 20th, and if you are interested in being in on that early registration sequence of things, just send me a private message and I will make sure that you get added to the list, so that if you're interested, you can get more information and you can jump in while the jumping is good. And here's how you can reach me. Certainly through the Facebook page, Iridology Education, on Instagram, iridology.education. Some of you are, well, you're all now on my email list if you're seeing this, and that means you can reach me by email as well. That is all I have for you today. I hope you found that useful and informative and insightful. Hopefully it has increased your understanding of what iridology is and what it allows us to do and how to use it. I hope you have a really good day, and we'll see you in the Facebook group. Katie, you are so welcome. We will see you in the Facebook group and hopefully on future webinars. Bye for now.